if you look at it with Dustin's logic in reverse of Vecna being the general, the Mind Flayer being his captain, it follows that kind of villain procedure very well of going from grunt to larger force and then the final villain.
He just found an empty space. Some form of his body was banished to by 11 when she opened that first door. There were creatures there like the Demogorgon, and there was this dark energy force that ultimately becomes the Mind Flayer that's manipulated by Vecna.
Hey, welcome back to the studio. Today we are going to be answering the age-old question from Stranger Things. Was Vecna controlling the Mind Flayer? I'm here, I'm Wyatt, and we've got Joe behind the desk over there.
Howdy.
I know my answer, or at least I have a couple approximations on my theories.
Okay.
I don't know how you're feeling about this. Do you want me to go first, or would you like to go first?
I'm curious to what your thoughts are, because I've done a little bit of research and I feel like I have info, but I don't have necessarily theories. So let's have you start.
Okay. So, just sort of to generalize, I'm going to say yes. Because from what we saw in the last episode, they do a little bit of, I would say, backstory for Vecna, a little bit of showing kind of what he experienced and what he went through right after he was transported by 11 into a dimension, not necessarily the Upside Down as we know it. But that's where he found the Mind Flayer, sort of an amorphous cloud of particles swirling around. Now, I don't know that the Mind Flayer was a being. I don't know that it was anything but sort of a physical entity.
Kind of like a force.
Yeah, like a force. I don't know that it had a mind. Because from what we see in the episode, he puts his hand out, he starts controlling it, and then it takes on the aspects of sort of a spider. Which, we see, from his childhood, he had a connection with spiders and the web, and kind of the connection
for sure
of everything. Even going so far as to say, I think he kind of manipulates the Upside Down to
bend to his wishes,
bend to
pretty
his
much.
will, but also, the vines and everything create sort of a web. Where if you touch something, the rest of the hive mind kind of knows that you're there, or the spider itself knows that you're there.
And it's all kind of connected to him.
He reaches out, he forms it into what he wants it to be.
Definitely.
And then that's kind of the form that it takes on later.
So, one thing that I've thought about is what they presented in season 3 and season 2, and really heavily that the Mind Flayer was like the ultimate bad. And then in this season 4, we got Dustin saying that if the Mind Flayer was like, the captain or whatever, then Vecna is his 5-star general. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So there are theories going around the internet that think that might still be true, but obviously, based on the volume 2, that can't be, because ultimately Vecna created the Mind Flayer. Vecna, because even in the show, Vecna is talking to 11, I believe, or he's giving monologue, and he says, "I found something that gives me the ability to become what I always am supposed to be." Does that make sense?
I think, what Stranger Things has done is set up kind of this idea that based on sort of the fantasy logic, of how this kind of stuff works, that the conclusions that the kids come to are often on the right track.
For sure.
And they're often sort of, in the right vein, but not always correct. I think that's sort of where they were leading us is that Dustin is kind of on the right track,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not correct.
Yeah.
And they show us in the last episode that it is, in fact, Vecna who is in control of the Mind Flayer.
For sure.
It's kind of reverse.
Yeah.
You know, Vecna's the general. The Mind Flayer is his tool, his captain.
Yeah.
You know, leading the charge.
Yeah, because I think with the power of Vecna, what this guy brought to it is he just found an empty space.
Yeah.
He found a desolate world, a dimension that his mind, his consciousness, some form of his body was banished to by 11 when she opened that first door. And there were creatures there like the Demogorgons, the Demodogs, right? And there was this dark energy force that ultimately becomes the Mind Flayer that's manipulated by Vecna, right?
And I think I don't think the Mind Flayer's a mind as much as it is sort of something that resembles one.
Yeah.
And because it is that way, he can manipulate it and he can form it into what he wants it to be.
So to answer the question, it's kind of like, yes, he is controlling it the whole time.
Because if you look at events, number one, season 1, I don't think he's really in control of anything that's happening. I don't think that the writers of the show had exactly what they wanted planned probably until the second season. If you were to go even further, you could say the third season of what the ultimate evil was in the show. I think they probably had kind of an idea of what they wanted to do overall by the second season.
So you don't
when they knew that Netflix was picking it up again.
Yeah. So you don't think that the Duffer Brothers kind of knew what story they were telling the whole time?
I think they knew exactly the kind of story they wanted to tell. And I think they got to tell it in the first season. And then the second season, they built on that. And I think this happens a lot with TV shows is you have an idea, you know what you want to say. And so you're like, all right, well, let's try to say this in the first season. And if we can't say any more about it, then the first season is beautiful and it's great.
Yeah.
I don't think they really started developing the idea of Vecna and who he is probably until second season.
And kind of how he relates to everybody.
Third. Yeah.
I don't know. In some ways, I think, I feel like the nature of the Upside Down is a bit complex, because I wanted to bring this up, is that the Upside Down from the first season, there's the Demogorgon. It feels just like a standard monster movie. You called it Alien, correct?
Yeah.
So if we take that approach, it's just a simple alien story, but then there's this complex other dimension that's built around it. Then you get to the second season where you have that added to. And then the third season with introducing the Mind Flayer. And then you have the rise of the Mind Flayer in season 3 with kind of his avatar, his proxy that's in the other dimension. And then we ultimately have where everything's coming from. Because the biggest question around Stranger Things has always been, where does the Mind Flayer come from? Why is the Upside Down a thing? Where did the Upside Down come from? And in some ways, we still don't know. We don't know what this void place was, but we know how it became the way it is, you know? Yeah. And I think, and all of the events up to this point make sense according to what has taken place. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, it follows a pretty standard kind of pattern of, I would say, opposition storytelling.
Okay.
So the villain side of things.
Yeah.
So first season, you have probably a pretty basic villain. It's not obviously the ultimate villain, but it is a strong, powerful creature that a lot of people have to contend with.
For sure.
Second season, they're dealing with a stronger evil that they're having to deal with alongside kind of the demidogs, which evolve more of in our world.
Yep.
So in addition to that, they're having to deal with it. And then third season, they're dealing primarily with the Mind Flayer. And then fourth season, you're dealing with the big bad.
Yeah.
So if you look at it with Dustin's logic in reverse of Vecna being the general, the Mind Flayer being his captain, it follows that kind of villain procedure very well, of going from grunt to, medium force to larger force, and then the final villain, the guy controlling everything.
For sure.
And I think that makes sense, and I think it works.
Yeah.
If I were to say, looking at the show just on a very surface level, introducing Vecna in the final season, it doesn't feel like they knew what his villain was, even though they may have in the earlier seasons. If they knew in season 2 what they were going to do with his character, I would have liked a little bit more setup.
Yeah,
but
with Vecna specifically.
And I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt of knowing where they wanted to take the story.
Yeah.
And taking each step of being like, well, we're going to tell this in this season. We're going to tell this story in this season.
Yeah. It's
you
building to this?
Looking at it from the outside, I would have been like, oh, they made him up for the final season. I would have made him up for the final season and then used flashbacks to connect him. Even if they had made him up for the previous seasons, it didn't make sense if they wanted to have sort of a closed storytelling loop for each season, which they did, and they had very well, I think, for each season.
I think in some ways, the Duffer Brothers are coming out with a masterclass on kind of this horror storytelling.
Yeah.
I think it would be appropriate for us to take and purchase this masterclass, because then we can learn about how they've thought about it throughout the process.
I mean,
how they think themselves.
Wait, is this a legitimate masterclass?
It's a legitimate masterclass.
Okay, so I'd like to see. I would hope that there were some insights on Stranger Things itself.
Yeah,
and what parts of the story they actually had ironed out from the beginning, and what parts they were loosely, I'm saying this, making up along the way.
Yeah,
I'd like to see kind of the whole thing, because honestly, the last season, even though Vecna is introduced. And we get to know him through flashbacks, and we get to know him, in the final season, not really knowing him in any of the other seasons, or even really alluding to his character.
Well, almost the final season. It's not quite
not
the final season,
but
yet.
this most recent season is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They did a really good job telling the story of this villain.
Yeah.
Even though this is the first time we're seeing him, it feels like he's kind of lived in this world the entire time.
Definitely.
And that's a really great way to introduce a final villain if you haven't had him in the previous seasons.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that they've definitely focused on that's been the unfolding story the entire time has been pretty much what is Eleven's relationship with the Upside Down. And we kind of got that answer, We kind of got why and when the Upside Down was created. Not really created, but why can we have access to it? When she destroyed one, he fell into this void. The Upside Down as we know it was created by one who survived.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, he's been working his strange psychology into this other dimension and using his powers, which mirror Eleven's, to create this hive mind of basically spider influenced and web influenced, for the purpose of cleansing the world, essentially.
Right. I think that's probably the only thing in the last season that I don't know what his final motive is. I mean, you say it's like kind of cleansing. I don't know that he really says what he wants.
I don't know. From what I think, it reminds me of. I don't know what it reminds me of. It makes me think that what he has is that he thinks he's not human, and he thinks that humans are a parasite.
Okay.
And he thinks that in order for there to be some kind of cleansing, because that's what he wanted to do, his ideas are very Hitler-esque in a lot of ways, before he gets thrown into the Upside Down, before he becomes Vecna.
Yeah.
He wanted 11 to join him so that they can cleanse the world, essentially.
Yeah, power over anything else.
Power over inferiority.
Inferiority. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
You know?
That he is superior to others, and he wants to kind of get rid of those who aren't the same as him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And if that's his motivation, then you would see that, throughout the years he's been trying and hatching these different plans to be like, I'm going to try to open a door and send in, a Demogorgon.
Right.
Maybe even mentally controlling the Demogorgon's actions. Then he's created his general, the Mind Flayer, which he's hatching plans to try to open up a large door, and that is ultimately foiled by 11. Now he's saying, I need to do this myself. Right. I'm opening the biggest door possible. And ultimately, I think he gets it. Like, he's able to open the door, and that's how kind of the season ends, Mm-hmm. I mean, Hawkins is a mess at the end of the season.
Yeah, we're following another pretty standard storytelling device of the heroes lose so that they can win.
Yeah.
Ultimately, maybe not necessarily. Maybe it's not going to be the happiest of wins. We're probably going to lose people along the way, but they're going to win. They did it in the last Airbender series. They did it in Avengers, Infinity War. The heroes have to lose so that, there's an uphill battle and that they can win.
Yeah. It's a pretty heavy
They got to be
loss.
running up that hill.
They're going to be running up that hill, man.
Yeah.
Look, and they lose pretty dramatically. Since we kind of answered the question, I want to briefly discuss some of our predictions in our last Stranger Things video. I want to talk a little bit about those characters who died, specifically Eddie. He became kind of a beloved character in this season, even though he's just introduced.
Again, the idea of introducing a character, having them have a storyline that makes sense and that makes people connect with them, only in one season. It was really solid for Eddie. It felt like he was a good, fleshed out character that people liked, that people could identify with.
Yeah.
We had the weird kids up until this point. Now we have the weirder kid.
Yeah,
right?
the one who's rocking out in the middle of a upside down storm.
And everybody, if you're not that person, you know that person.
Yeah.
And we see that he comes to realize what his fault is, and that he runs away. He's always running away. He's scared. He's frightened of the future. He's frightened of, responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's a really great story arc that they fulfill in the end.
Yeah.
It would be terrible if they had him live and not fulfill the story arc, or die and not fulfill the story arc. But to introduce a character, establish him very well, make people like him, and then fulfill a specific story arc is such a beautiful thing to do. And I think people a lot of times nowadays don't feel like they don't do it in movies and TV.
Yeah.
They don't, or they don't do it right. You don't have to have a huge process of who this character is, what all of their insecurities are.
For sure.
The audience can gather that as they watch. All you have to do is have one thing.
Yeah.
One thing specifically, and then make that kind of their arc.
Yeah. I think it's important now we talk a little bit about our incorrect predictions, specifically mine, when it comes to Steve.
You thought it was Steve. Everybody thought it was Steve.
I don't know. Everyone thought it was Steve,
I thought it
man.
was Steve.
You thought it... Well, it's just because I presented an argument,
It would have been an easy kill.
It would have been an easy kill, but in the last two episodes, they were leading to something with Steve, and ultimately, I feel like the ball fell short with his character development.
I think they established him up to this point of, like, who he is overall. I think they're going to continue this into the second season and make it a bigger deal, I guess.
Yeah.
They're gonna make what he wants and how he feels kind of a bigger story arc for his character.
Yeah.
They have decided probably what they're going to do with him, but they decided not to finish off his character or have, they left a lot of loose ends. They're not gonna close off exactly what they want to do with him in this final season.
Yeah.
It was easier with kind of some of the newer characters.
Yeah.
Like the bully, they kind of cut his story off. Cut it in half, literally.
Gosh,
it kind of sucked. That was actually kind of disappointing to me.
Okay.
Because Lucas knocks out the bully, the portal opens, brutally splits him in half, and he's unconscious.
Yeah.
I'd have made it a little bit more violent if we were going to go that route. I'd have made him like been awake and be like, ah. That would have been a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
But they close off his story. They close off Eddie's story.
Let's as we come to an end though, I want to say this. Let's talk a little bit about stories that are confirmed that are not ended. Specifically Vecna. We got confirmation from Will that he's around.
Yeah, he's still there.
We got the missing body confirmation that he's still there.
So classic.
Body
goes out the window. Everybody goes outside. It's gone.
Yeah. So
Max, I think, is still alive, just not present in her mind at the moment.
Here's a theory I want to swing by you that we'll have to wait probably a few years before we can hear. Okay?
Yeah.
Max is in her mind still. 11 just can't find her.
Okay.
Vecna's also in her mind, hiding out.
Or
because she said earlier in the season, Max said, it's my mind, not his.
Yeah.
I can control my own mind, right? Right. So that means that's foreshadowing to see there's going to be a battle for her mind later on.
I would say Vecna has her mind.
Is Max present at all?
Max is present, but Vecna's holding her mind.
Okay.
In his.
Okay.
Right? And because he knows that 11 will come for it.
Yeah. But right now he's trying to hide out from 11.
But I think
he
could still have it. I think he could still have it.
Still have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why would it be there? Why would it not be there unless she was dead?
That's true. I will say this. With the specifics aside, Duffer Brothers, you don't really seem to be swinging anything past us. We all know that Vecna is attached to Max.
Yeah.
We all know it.
We know that there's a connection.
Definitely.
Pretty solid.
A well-established connection. So I thought that Steve might be the big sad story, but really it was Max and Eddie.
Yeah.
And not really sad, but Papa's gone. Papa's dead.
Is gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Papa's
didn't
dead.
Think about that as much.
If you guys are interested in hearing any more theories like this, leave a comment. Let us know you want to hear it. But we also want to hear your guys's. So if there's something that we touched on that you can elaborate on, or ideas, or even things you want to kind of correct or tweak here and there to help us out, that'd be awesome. Maybe some stuff we missed. Any final thoughts you got, Wyatt? As far as kind of wrapping up our thoughts, we might not talk about Stranger Things for a while after this.
Yeah, and that's weird to think about. It's been on the radar for so long.
Yeah.
No, 100%. We want to hear your theories. And we thank you guys for watching the video. We would appreciate if you like and subscribe to the channel. And I think that's about it.
That's it.
We'll see you next time.